Welcome to UCTV Prime Vote. The topic this time is money. Money being raised and spent on behalf of Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. To explain why there's so much money in this cycle and where it's coming from, we have Thad Kousser. He's an associate professor of political science at UC San Diego and the co-author of The Logic of American Politics. And in Washington, Bruce Cain, a professor of political science on faculty at Berkeley, but now running the UC Washington Center. He's also written extensively on campaign finance reform. So welcome to both of you. Thad, I want to start with you. What kind of money are we talking about in this cycle?
Probably over $1 billion. That was the record-setting total in the 2008 presidential election. It smashed the records before. Barack Obama himself raised and spent about $740 million. And that exceeded what George Bush and John Kerry did combined. And so it looks like we're on pace to see that. Now, both candidates aren't raising quite as much money yet as they did from this point in the 2008 election. But now that Mitt Romney is the presumptive nominee, now that Barack Obama is fully turning towards this election, they'll probably get us into that $1 million territory.
$1 million?
Billion, sorry, billion. Now we're talking real money.
Okay, Bruce Cain, I understand there's a new player this cycle, and can you tell us about that?
Yes, the super PACs, and this is new because we've had a series of court decisions, not just Citizens United, but other cases as well, that have loosened the rules for independent spending on campaigns. First, we had a court case that loosened the definition of what an issue ad was, and then we had decisions that allowed unlimited money from corporate and trade union treasuries, the Citizens United decision. And then most recently we had a decision, SpeechNow.org versus the FEC, that allowed individuals to give unlimited amounts of money to the super PACs to run ads independently against candidates. So the super PACs bring in two new elements. One, an enormous amount of spending because they can get unlimited contributions. And secondly, the veil of anonymity that makes it very hard for us to know who's funding these things and what their motive is.
What was the Supreme Court trying to say with the Citizens United decision? What was going on there?
What the court has basically said is, look, the only permissible reason to regulate money is if it potentially corrupts the actions of public officials. And if you give the money directly to the candidate, then there's a direct quid pro quo relationship between the donor and the candidate. But if you're spending the money to exercise your speech, there's no direct quid pro quo relationship, and therefore it cannot corrupt. Now, to many critics of the court, this is extremely naive, this distinction, that a sense of obligation could be every bit as strong if somebody's spending independently as if they got the check directly to their coffers.
I think there's some reasonable justification for saying, corporations and unions have a say in politics, and if they're not trying to give money directly to the candidate, then they should be able to try to influence an election, spend money independently. I think what people worry about is how independent that money is. So when you have people who come from Mitt Romney's staff setting up his super PACs, same thing for Priorities USA on the Obama side, everybody is all part of the same family. Folks know where the money's coming from. Folks know how to spend that money, and that distinction of an independent expenditure versus a party-to-candidate contribution, or a donor-to-candidate contribution, that might just be completely moot in this day and age.
And is there a real separation between the candidates and the super PACs the way they claim?
They can't talk, and they don't, for everything we know, they don't violate those rules. The question is, how hard is it to figure out, if you've been involved in someone's campaign in the past, and if you know national politics, how hard is it to figure out what their message is going to be in this campaign? So when Karl Rove is running his super PAC and his nonprofit version of it, he's not on the phone with Mitt Romney every day, but he certainly has a great sense of how to run a winning presidential campaign.
As I understand it, super PACs and traditional PACs are the same, and they must disclose their donors. Okay, but for people who have money and want to influence elections but don't want to be identified, What do they do?
Right. Well, they give money to a public welfare group, 501c4 organizations. And these, we've already seen a shift in this campaign where super PACs might actually be obsolete by the end of this campaign. Campaign finance shifts like this. We remember 527 groups that we were all up in arms about? Well, those have gone the way of like MySpace and CD-ROM drives. So look, where people are giving money now are to these public welfare groups that as long as politics isn't their primary mission, and as long as they're not directly advocating on behalf of a candidate, if they're just saying President Obama's doing a bad job or Mitt Romney stands for terrible things in corporate America, but not urging someone to vote for or against him, they can spend that money without disclosing who's giving their donors. And American Crossroads has one of these arms. This is the pro-Republican group set up by Karl Rove. The nonprofit arm has outraised the super PAC 4-to-1 by $40 million to $10 million just in this cycle.
And these are undisclosed donors?
These are undisclosed donors. We don't know who's given them. Question is, do those candidates have any idea who's supporting them, and will they get more access and influence depending on the eventual winner?
Okay, I want to play 2 ads that were produced by these nonprofit arms.
Domestic oil production's at an 8-year high.
Oh, really? His own administration admits production's down where Obama's in charge. The real story.
A lot of these increases in production went back to Bush-era decisions, and most of them, of course, are on private land. So you're taking credit for this boost in exploration, which is not really fair.
Taking credit for others' hard work. Typical Washington. No matter how Obama spins it, gas costs too much. Tell Obama stop blaming others. Work to pass better energy policies.
Mitt Romney. He made millions off companies that went bankrupt while workers lost promised health and retirement benefits. His own tax return from last year reveals he made $21 million, yet paid a lower tax rate than many middle-class families. Now Romney's proposing a huge new $150,000 tax cut for the wealthiest 1%, while cutting Medicare and education for us. Mitt Romney, if he wins, we lose.
Clearly, these are ads that fit very much into the normal campaign mode. They get away with being called issue ads and not candidate ads because they avoid magic words like elect or defeat or, basically words that relate to the election process itself and tell the voters what to do. But short of that, they are delivering the message that both campaigns want to emphasize going forward into November. That is, for the Republicans, they want to take the energy policies that Obama has. They want to criticize the increase in gas prices. They want to argue that Obama's green agenda is basically deflecting from doing a better job with fossil fuels. And so this ad hits right on one of the key claims that the Republicans want to make about Obama. They can call it an issue ad because they don't say defeat Obama or vote for Romney. Similarly, the ad that Obama has for Romney goes after what almost certainly will be the Democratic campaign theme, which is that Mitt Romney represents the super wealthy and that the policies that he plans to pursue, particularly the tax policies he plans to pursue, serve the interests of the wealthy voters, not the average American.
Right now, for whatever reasons, Republicans have just been more successful in raising money from these super PACs. Mitt Romney is outraising his super PACs, outraising President Obama's super PAC by 5-to-1 margin, whereas Barack Obama is doing better with small donors. So everybody could see clearly what the partisan impact would be of changing the rules. And so Congress is not going to change the rules in the middle of this game.
The analogy that is often used in academic circles is the so-called hydrology analogy, namely that money is like water that flows to the path of least resistance. And if there are these constitutional holes, like independent spending, like individuals can spend as much of their own money as possible on their campaigns, these holes will be where the water goes through. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing many wealthy candidates putting their own money out there and running for office, and we're seeing independent groups now responding to the fact that there's this big constitutional hole called independent spending, whether or not really it is independent. So, it's not surprising, it's not really shocking. I think even the reform community knew that these were problems, but they were so busy trying to plug one hole and thought it was an achievement to do that, and they said, well, we'll just plug the other one down the road. But obviously, in order to do that, you need some constitutional support from the Supreme Court, and it just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget that Citizens United opened up this entirely new floodgate of money from corporations and from union treasuries, something that I don't think the reform groups expected, and that money is also rushed into politics through all of these independent means.
That's true, but let me just say one thing here. To date, some of the big corporations have been very careful about getting into this game, and most of the money seems to be coming from small businesses, family-owned businesses, and from wealthy individuals. And part of the reason is that consumers are starting to push back and ask questions of large corporations about how they're spending their money and what fraction of it is going into political contributions. So we're seeing a real reluctance and caution on the part of the major corporations.
Bruce, do you see any political price being paid either by Romney or Obama for taking super PAC money or having money spent on their behalf?
There's no price to be paid on the Republican side. There sometimes is a price to be paid on the Democratic side, but I think that the kind of people that are going to be put off by the sort of undermining the existing hard money system were already put off by the collapse of the public finance system, which happened in 2008 when Barack Obama decided not to take the public money, but rather, because the public money came with restrictions on how much he could spend. Neither candidate is going to take the public money this time. There was an initial disappointment in 2008 when Barack Obama did that, but there's nothing in the polling evidence at the end of the 2008 election that suggests that he lost significant numbers of voters by doing that. I think those kinds of tactical decisions pale compared to economic conditions and the nature of the campaign fought in the closely contested states. Those are far more important things than tactical decisions that are taken by the candidates.
Yeah, I think voters are willing to let candidates play the game the best they can under the rules that are in place. And Democrats and Republicans both say, well, if this is a system, go out and win in that system. And they didn't think that Barack Obama, even though many Democrats supported the public financing system, he more than anyone has contributed to its demise. I don't think Barack Obama paid any electoral price from that and didn't take a whole lot of heat from it.
Let me add one more thing, and that is that I think that the dynamic of this election could look a lot more like 2004, meaning that it may hinge much more on the mobilization of the party bases rather than the turnout of independent voters. And the people, we know from academic studies, the people that get most turned off by the process itself are the moderate voters. The base voters, the ones that really are dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, Republicans, no matter what, they're not as bothered by these kinds of tactical issues.
Well, so are we going to lose the little box on our tax reforms that says we can support public financing? Is that dead?
The system is done. Whether or not the government gets around to recognizing it is another matter, but the bottom line is that it is a dead system, and it's not clear how we're going to revive it, because the amount of money that is necessary for a presidential race grows. It's growing with every election cycle, and particularly with the kinds of fiscal problems that we're having in this country right now and the slow recovery from a recession. There's not going to be an appetite to put more money into the pot for elections, particularly if, as some people suspect, this election, because of the super PACs, is going to be more negative than usual. That usually has a dispiriting effect and causes voters to ask the very good question, why should I pay more and enjoy it less?
All right. Well, thank you, Bruce in Washington. I appreciate you being here. Bruce Cain is the Executive Director of the UC Washington Center, and Thad Kousser, an Associate Professor of Political Science here at UC San Diego. Thad and I will be back next month with more election analysis from the faculty of the University of California. Check it out on UCTV Prime Vote.